The Real Estate Story with Adrian Butera.
Hi everybody, Adrian Butera is my name and welcome to The Real Estate Story, coming to you live from our studio here. I'm once again excited and delighted to bring you two very, very special guests that are going to join me here today. We've got John Lark from Kangaroo Island Spirits and Adam Porteous from Rain and Horn, Batemans Bay. But before I get things going, our guests are here on Zoom, and before I bring the screen across to our guests, I typically would share with you a story in the middle of our podcast, but I'm going to start with a story this time around. This story goes back to early this year when my family and I were heading across on a family trip. As we do, we love our adventures. We were heading across on a family trip to Kangaroo Island, and we were on the Sea Spirit going across from the mainland across to the island when I got a phone call from the rangers to say that, unfortunate for us, our campsite had been closed down due to extreme weather conditions. And that was, of course, incredibly hot and windy conditions, and there were some bushfires on the island, but they weren't near our campground at the time. So that was okay. We figured we'd work it out as we got there, and we did. We sat and had a coffee in the main town, Kingscote, and then worked out that where we were going to stay. We found a lovely campground, set foot there for a few days as we constantly watched the fires, and all our family across social media was seeing the fires coming across from west to east across the island, and of course impacted the community greatly. But we felt like we were not under threat at any point in time. There were one particular evening we had a meeting with the mayor, came across to our campsite and said, look, you're all fine, you all should be okay, just stay put, there's a lot of grass between you and the bush, and if it comes out of the bush, they'll be able to fight it and fight it well. That meeting concluded at about 9 o'clock, and at about 11 o'clock we had the camp manager knock on our tent and said, you're going to need to evacuate. I must say, the walk between from the meeting to our tent, I did say to my wife, I think we start to pack a few things just in case. At 11 o'clock at night, we loaded the kids in the car, we hooked on the camper trailer, rushed and got as much gear packed down as we could, strapped down the camper trailer, hitched on, and drove to the refuge centre in Kingscote, where we spent the night. We were safe, we were fine, but as we were rolling out of the caravan park, the campground, there were a couple of fire engines rolling in, and that was just a weird, eerie feeling. You couldn't see anything, but you could certainly smell the smoke, and later the next day we found ash all over our camper trailer. We were fine, and as we know, the community was greatly impacted. The amazing part of that story is we lined up at the refuge centre, as everybody did. They were streaming to get off the island. They just wanted to get off the island because of the impact. And when I say get off the island, it's tourists that wanted to leave and move on. And as I was in the line, I hadn't consulted with my family or wife at the time. I just ended up falling into the line. And I was next, and the lady said, right, when do you want to get off? And I thought, I don't know that I want to rush and get off. I think the one thing this community needs right now is us to be tourists, as long as we don't get in the way. So we decided to stay at least another 4 days, and we were supposed to be there 10. And that seemed to work okay. So we packed up the trailer from the refuge centre. We figured there are going to be people that need that space more than us. We then moved on, and our first stop that morning was at Kangaroo Island Spirits, where we tasted and bought a couple of bottles of gin, which was wonderful, and the kids were feeling pretty good, even though we didn't know where we were going to stay that night. I remember saying to the young lass on the other side of the counter, she said, where are you from? And we said, Melbourne. Where are you staying? I said, well, that's a good question. Actually, we were evacuated last night, and we don't really have a place to stay tonight, but we felt quite comfortable that we were going to work that out. And we did. We worked that out, and we moved on to another campground. But as I was walking through the car park, I realised that a guy came up in a car and he said, guys, I overheard that you have nowhere to stay tonight. I said, yeah, but we'll be all right. And he said, well, if you like, you could stay here tonight. And I thought, no, we'll be right, mate. He said, there's toilets and there's showers and there's a couple of animals around and there's plenty of space for the kids to muck around. I thought, that's very generous of you and very nice of you, but look, we're going to be okay. And there's other people in the community that this generosity should be going out to them. It doesn't need to be us, because we felt quite comfortable even though the community was impacted. We went on and found a campground and had an enjoyable time on Kangaroo Island. But I never forgot that that very humble gesture to stay on his property. That was the owner of Kangaroo Island Spirits. He didn't know that we were chatting at the time. He was just being generous to some stranger in a big black four-wheel drive. But I'm going to welcome our very first guest who will join us, and I'm going to talk to them both simultaneously, I'm sure. But John, welcome. I'm talking about you now.
Hey, Adrian.
John, thanks for joining us on the podcast. I was blown away at your gesture at the time. And of course, since then, Compton Greens decided to throw out the bottle of Moe's and no longer give that out to our clients. We now give out Kangaroo Island Spirits. I hope that's okay.
That's fantastic. We really appreciate the support, and we really appreciate the friendship and relationships we develop as part of our business. So, yeah, I remember that day very well. The bogingness of the fires and what was going on. But, yeah, I do remember that. So, yeah, I'm really pleased to hear that you're still there and still supporting us. That's been very fantastic. Thank you.
It's been great to support, but give us, before we talk more about the fires and we'll talk to Adam, but give us a bit of an insight into Kangaroo Island Spirits and the island in general. Could you sum it up in a couple of paragraphs?
And the island is the third biggest island. It's much bigger than most people realise. It's 170 kilometres long. Half of it was burnt in those fires, and the fires got to 3 kilometres from our business. Sarah and I grew up in Sydney, she grew up in Perth. We met in the desert in WA, and I had a brother making whiskey in Tasmania. And back at our wedding in 2002, we said, why don't we make gin? And he said gin was rubbish, you should make whiskey. And we ignored him and came to Kangaroo Island, fell in love with the place, and set up what turned out to be Australia's first dedicated gin distillery.
Fantastic. And you make a large array of gins, I might add. I think I've sampled all of them, but there may be some I haven't yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's 6 on the table at the moment. So we have a new limited release one that we've actually released. We had some gin that was aging in some wine barrels from a vineyard down the road. Very good friends of ours, Islander Estate, you may have recalled, and they lost all their vines on that bad day in January. And first on the scene to help them in the weeks after that were a mob called Disaster Relief Australia, ex-veterans who go out and help clean up. And in 2 days, they managed to do about 4 months' work of cleanup. So we've released this gin that's out of their barrels and thought that we'll give something back from every sale to that organisation to say thanks. Yale wouldn't take anything from us, but that's just another way of saying thanks to all those people that came across.
It's one thing as we've watched through the media and through social media, the community getting together, and that's just demonstrating another way the community can get together and help each other. John, give me an insight. How many people do you employ at KI Spirits?
About 12 FTE. We have 3 in the mainland. We have a little warehouse in Adelaide. Living on an island, the best thing about it's remoteness. Worst thing about it's remoteness. At certain times of the year, we can't get stock on and off the island. So we have a little Adelaide base in Port Adelaide. And then the rest of the team are here in Celador and production and grounds and marketing. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to come back to you, John. Adam,
Yep.
welcome. Let's get you up on the screen here. Adam, you're tell us your business. What are you? You're at Rain and Horn. You're an estate agent like I am.
Yeah. Estate agent like yourself. Been doing this since I was 18, so I'm now, that's 30 years. So 30 years, 48. Sons are still there. Not in Batemans Bay. Started off in the Blue Mountains. So to give you a bit of a background from fires, that was living in Katoomba in the Blue Mountains, sort of west of Sydney. That was part of our life. So the fires that came through our way, it's sort of nothing new to me from sort of childhood memory. But to give you a background, we've got 20 on staff, so we've got 20 people on staff. Been in Batemans Bay for 25 years. And reasonable. I've got 4 kids and 2 wives, 1 wife now. But yeah, and sort of part of the community that we've sort of grown to love.
And now, mate, where were you earlier this year when these fires were coming through your community? So was it your own home, or you were at work? What was happening at the time?
Personal home came through. So to give you an insight as to what happened on that day, the fire started here about a month earlier. So we were pretty aware. So we and knowing the amount of underscrub that hadn't been burned off over the last 20 years, and my history, and being in the bush as well, which is something that once a mountain man, always a mountain man. I knew. So I said to my wife, if they swing around the back, which is sort of near the coast, as a mountain called the Clyde Mountains. But swing back over there, we'll be shot and we'll lose a house. And I called that in December. Now, I didn't actually think that was going to happen. It was just sort of one of those off-the-cuff remarks. But sure enough, on the 31st, we were at home. It was about 34 degrees at 4 in the morning. Got to about 35 at 6, and we'd already packed the car by that stage. Then a fire truck appeared in our driveway. We're on 6 acres. And he walked up the driveway and said, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "We're leaving." And he said, "That's a very wise move," because they weren't putting a tanker in our yard. And I said, "Where's the fire?" He said, "Dog Trap," which is about 1K away from our house.
That's pretty close when fire moves quickly.
Yeah, and it was moving about 6 kilometres an hour at that stage. So we knew we didn't have much time. So we just packed up what we could. But the car was mostly loaded. So 2 kids, one 2.5-year-old and one 1-year-old, stacked in the car, a couple of dogs, and shot out the door. So, and then came back and basically the house was leveled. We came back 4 hours later and the house was gone.
4 hours later, it was gone, just gone, levelled.
4 hours later. Yeah, we broke through the police barriers, went around the corner, stuck around the back door and snuck up. And of course, my wife was devastated and it's a very funny feeling to have nothing. I think it's only something that people that have been through the process really understand. And thankfully, I had an auction 2 days later because I'm an auctioneer like myself, and a couple came down. We're auctioning her mum's house, and they lost their house in the Canberra fires about 20 years ago, about 15 years ago, and they had a very similar story to what I just experienced. So it was very, I suppose, comforting at the time to realise, what people and be able to talk to people outside of our area who've been through it, and unfortunately, it's still affected them 15 years later.
And I'm going to ask. We'll talk a little bit about the effect and what's moved on. John, can I go back to you when those fires were impacting KI and they were happening around many businesses at Kangaroo Island shut down because they had staff fighting fires, or even though their businesses weren't directly impacted by a fire front, their own homes or their staff homes, and therefore the staff were on the front line. Did that impact follow through to your business?
Yeah, most of our staff are from the western end of the island, so a lot of them evacuated their homes 5 or 6 times, and we had staff on trucks and out defending family farms. So it was a very traumatic time for our staff, and we closed for 2 days only, but there was one night in particular, and we remember the fire got very close, and everybody from the western end of the island who was left ended up in Kingscote, and we really felt Kingscote was going to go that day. There was an ocean liner offshore waiting to evacuate the township. We could see the glow on the horizon. We couldn't breathe for smoke in Kingscote. It was and we knew that the fires were just moving at a pace 6 times faster than we'd known before. It was just, I don't know, and everyone was reacting very differently emotionally, but it was a very traumatic time.
Yeah, I struggle to not be emotional when I think about these things, because I think, you think of what's going on in the world at the moment with COVID, and it's affected everybody. One of our we've shut an office down yesterday because of the new shutdowns in Victoria, but that's a temporary move, and whilst economically we'll be challenged moving on, I don't feel like there's going to be that emotional baggage that seems like carries with those that, Adam, such as you, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I reckon it's pretty heavy weight to carry when you lose your home. How do your kids respond? How does all that happen?
Thankfully, they're only young. So the 2.5-year-old's probably the one that's been more affected than anything. But she's a smart kid, so she's sort of rolling with things. The 1-year-old, he's just a machine, so he just doesn't mind things. He just thinks it's all been a big adventure. But I think it's more, it is heavy. And I suppose being in real estate, the unfortunate part is that you're putting a lot of people first before yourself. Because we talk about the community. I'm sure the same thing happened on KI. It was just the community support was monstrous, and we had a bit of a joke coming on board with Canberra. But the Canberrites, 25% of the properties down here are owned by them, and they were literally throwing keys at me. They were literally walking the office door, or when they could get the actual keys to us, or telling us the codes of their holiday homes to let people come and stay for free. Just put them in our house.
That's amazing, isn't it? That's so good.
And so much that we had access property, which is sort of a real estate agent's delight, and there weren't as many. We did lose 500 homes in our shire, so 500 homes destroyed, and I think there was probably about 300 of those were permanent residents, and the other 200 were holiday homes, which is still, people lose their holiday homes, probably doesn't sound as effective, but some of these homes have been in the family for generations, 2 and 3 generations, and the aftermath of that has been quite heavy, very heavy.
Can I ask about? Can I talk about business? You're in the property game. John sells spirits, gin.
I want to be in Dom's game.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that because I think, there's some obvious reason. But let's talk about property. So back then, you've got 500 properties burned down within the municipality. You've got people without a home. And you've got other people saying, hey, they can use my home. What happens to the real estate market in this time?
It was a very interesting period. It was almost, January we sort of shut down and people were just basically running around not knowing what to do or how to do things. It was more about housing things and keeping deals together that had happened in December. So the January period was quite a sort of, you could almost write it off to a degree. Although we still sold, I think we sold about 15 houses, which is fairly decent.
So I'm curious about that. Who buys a house in a community that's just grieving almost?
Well, it's funny you should say that. People that have lost their house literally bought a house the next day.
Really?
They literally walked in, they exchanged and moved in because they didn't have anywhere else to go. And I actually sat one couple down and said, listen, you're being emotional. I said, I've been through the same process. I said, you need to swallow up because I don't want to be selling them out in 6 months' time. Are you doing the right thing? And this couple particularly, they were older couple, said, no, we wanted to get off the 1.25 acres, the 5,000 square metre blocking downsize, and this is right for us. And thankfully, it's 6 months down the track and they haven't sold again, so they're obviously happy. But literally walked in and it was there was no bank at one end. They exchanged in our area, signed the contract and settled in a day.
That's great. Yeah, wonderful.
So you've got those people, and you've also got the people that were listen. There was a massive focus on the Batemans Bay and the KI region from an international basis too. So we also had some interest there. So there was a lot of emotional buying from insurance purposes, and in general terms, the insurance companies have been amazing. And then there was that hangover of the holiday buyers there as well. COVID was a different story though. So, but the bushfires was hectic. Prices just stayed flat.
How about rentals? Did you find people wanting to come in, people wanting to leave? What were the renters, your tenants doing?
It was a weird period, and I think that John had probably produced this too, is that we had this huge community support and people wanted to stay and wanted to help us and didn't want to go anywhere. Wonderful. Some people left, which is understandable, but a lot of people wanted to come and help. And of course, the work that's been generated out of rebuilding 500 homes, which they haven't even started yet, just the infrastructural base of clearing them off. They had to build a new tip and certain other things. So there's a massive amount of people come to town to fill that gap of that trade section.
Yeah, that's good. Sounds like positive. Now, John, you and I were talking before the episode. How's business? Can I ask that question again? I expect the same answer. How's business?
It's complicated. It's a complex answer. It's not a short answer. And there's two periods, of course. We were in January. Everything dropped and stopped, and we shut down and we closed. And January is our busiest month in the cellar door. So we were poised to. Fortunately, we had a lot of stock ready, and we managed to get 17 pallets off site and put them into places in Kingscote where they were safer. But after the fires, the tourism was stopped on the island, so there were no visitors coming. But then our cellar door became a central meeting point for military and all the services that were on the island that Adam talked about. We had the fireys and the emergency service people and the salvos and the RSPCA, and they'd all come in there at the end of a shift or end of a stint and have a coffee or a drink, or just farmers would find you when they could put the hoses down, would come in and sit down and catch their breath. And so that became important. So our sales were significantly down, but we felt like we were doing a good thing. And then on the back of that, we had a massive hit on our online store. Absolutely unbelievable. The outcry from around Australia, the support from around the world, but for spirits that needed to be within Australia. And we increased our sales in the month of January overall because of the online sales.
I think that is so good to hear that, because I think as a community we do stuff like that, and Australians we do stuff like that. But I also think we're monkey see, monkey do. So everybody listening to this should be doing the same, whether it's the KI community, Batemans Bays, anywhere affected by fire and relief, there's an opportunity to jump online and support them no matter what you need to acquire. It's great to hear. It's so good.
Yeah, that was great.
And John, tell me, obviously you've had the drop away, it dipped right away, but
Yep.
my friends in local, I can't say bars because they've been closed, but the guy that owns the local liquor shop, every time I walk in there, he has never had a bigger smile because he tells me his figures are up 30%. Everybody's been on the booze during COVID, which is nothing to be proud about, but it's one of the realities of where we're at.
Yeah, it is a double-edged sword. You're right. It is. It puts us in a good business place, but you're right. That isolation and people drinking more is something to be concerned about. But we had a buffer from the fires, which was just unusual historically. And then we went into COVID, and there was people were stockpiling toilet paper and to a lesser extent gin. So there was kind of a peak on there while people filled their pantries, and then we, like a lot of businesses around the island, all felt the same. And then it slowed down, and things were sort of steady, and they sort of carried through. And we had that buffer. We had two very bad months, very slow months in April and May in the cellar door, but we've now come back out the other side of that, and it was great on the long weekend in June. The feeling of people to be able to get out in South Australia, there's now open interstate travel, and it's a great feeling to see people out, albeit we've had to change our tack and our style of doing business, ways to sell. We've all learnt how to Zoom and Teams, Microsoft Teams frequently. On World Gin Day, we would normally be out at 4 or 5 venues in Adelaide. This year, we streamed into Tokyo live and did 2 live national 1 hour and a half casts from home, which was great. So we're changing constantly, almost weekly. And so that's been exciting. And when we did open, had a massive long weekend, but there was one person managing people arriving as a maitre d' almost to manage the numbers and keep the volumes correct and book people in and record the numbers. And one person constantly now on a sanitation regime. And people were understanding of that, and it was great. It was a great sort of turnaround, and things are sort of starting to pick up. We're about to go into the school holidays, so we're all looking forward to that.
Yeah, look, we're in just about the middle of our school holidays right now, and it's unfortunate because I in fact, I don't know if you recall, but I was supposed to be back on Kangaroo Island. I was coming back with 30 odd people, but that's changed, and no one wants to meet any Melburnians right now. It's
a very strange one of those changes I talked about, because a lot of our market here are self-drive domestic tourists, and we really enjoy welcoming Victorians on their school holidays, and it's good that it doesn't match ours because it stretches it out over a period.
We'll be back.
So I'm sure you will. And then the weird thing that we've got now is the South Australians who can't leave the country are looking for somewhere to go. So we're seeing an uptake there. So our biggest fear is that they'll open the border to Queensland because it's so damn cold here. Everyone's going to go to Cairns. I don't blame them.
And that may be the case. Now, let me ask very quickly. In fact, no rush in the answer. Out of adversity comes invention, and we create new things. And I'll stay with you, John, because I know you. I don't know that you invented, but you certainly sold something that I don't think you frequently sell, and I got a couple of boxes of it here, and we use it at every single one of our open for inspections as estate agents. Once again, a plug for estate agents to be supporting Australia rather than buying stuff from overseas. Tell us about what that is.
The sanitizer.
Yeah, correct.
What a roller coaster. My partner's sitting here quietly on the side. She's writing the script for Sanitizer, the musical. It was such a bizarre journey that, it was out of adversity. And it's part of our production process. We have a high alcohol waste product at 80%. We call it the heads. It comes out of the still first and we can't use it. And we store it up. And every now and then we'll have to write to the ATO to write it off, and we send it off to get cleaned up in an industrial distillery. Well, suddenly there was a shortage of sanitizer, and it became apparent that we could very quickly, by adding hydrogen peroxide and with or without glycerin, turn it into a sanitizer. And initially for us, it was about the island. We gave a 20-litre drum to the school. We gave some to the police. We noticed the hardware shop was going hammers and tongs, and they wanted to protect their staff, so we gave them some. We gave some to the council workers. Then we were contacted by other businesses who we've had relationships with. One was Benson Radiology in Adelaide, and they've supported us through their offices. They bought $15,000 worth of gin during the bushfire to try and help us out, and we were able to return the favour and supply them with sanitizer. And another one for us was Ronald McDonald House. We usually are sponsoring a gin bar at their annual fundraiser. Well, that didn't go ahead because of COVID this year, and suddenly it occurred to me, and I rang them, and a household of kids who were at high risk because their autoimmune system was down, and they had no sanitizers, so we were able to help them. So
Yeah, wonderful.
that was wonderful, and that all happened very quickly. And then suddenly there was massive overload of the stuff, as you can see. Again, it's coming in.
Yeah, yeah. Have you still got plenty of it? A bit of it?
We have. We're probably going to share it with a partner who will value add it.
Well, I'm going to say this again to our listeners. Kangaroo Island Spirits sanitizer, we've been using it all open for inspections, and it comes in the most beautiful bottle. So next time you need to give a gift and you're not sure whether someone likes red wine or white wine, dump the wine. Don't worry about the wine. Just give them a bottle of hand sanitizer. It'll put a smile on their face. It's outside of the norm. Why do you want to think normal anyway? So I think it's a wonderful gift idea, and it truly is a wonderful bottle. Adam, I'm going to come to you now. Out of the devastation and challenges, the bushfires, and then that led to COVID, where did the invention come from? What did you guys create as a result of the fires? And take me forward.
I think we've all experienced. I think it's weird, but we were benefit. I see that the bushfires were a benefit to us coming to COVID because we already knew how to work from home. We already had the sort of shock wave of how to work in isolation. So certainly Zooming and working from home and importing a Matterport camera, getting hold of that and being able to sell houses sight unseen to people, which I'm sure Adrian, you have done in the past and have done recently. But we sold about 6 properties during the COVID period, sight unseen, using the Matterport camera and signed exchange contracts and purchased. It's always interesting as an agent that first visit when someone's bought something and they haven't seen it before and they just paid $500,000 for something and walking through the door.
Still scares me to this very day. I understand it's the new norm, but it scares me.
I agree. Yet we've all bought cars without test driving them to a certain degree, and I think this is where things are heading. But we were sort of grateful in that manner. So I know it sounds weird. We instantly qualified for JobKeeper because of our downturn from the fire. So we always grasped at the upkeep. So again, we were able to keep all our team during that period of time as well, and certainly get them on the wheels to spin things to see.
Was there a lag? Obviously, bushfires hit. Did you lose people and then had to bring them back?
No, not at all.
Yeah, wonderful.
I think that, and even to this day, losing the house is a great card to be able to play from an emotional perspective on keeping people to a certain degree. But we had a very tough period of time with the office anyway within that 6-month period for everyone in a personal state. But we've all kept them all together. And again, the reason why we've just come back from Canberra today was a celebration for them for the last 6 months, and we're having another one in 2 weeks with
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're having a big night to celebrate. And a thank you from my wife and I for sticking with us and hanging on to us and then going through things. But in saying that, we're a regional coastal area. We're from a beneficial place. Unfortunately, you being in a city in Melbourne, and I think John out in KI are going to benefit as well, as I think we're seeing that more people are moving to the coast to a lifestyle reasons because they can work from home. So we're benefiting from a big way from that factor of people be saying, crap, I can work from home, and still be on a great salary, but live a lifestyle where I'd much rather live than being in a city and being shut down in certain circumstances and still being able to live. So, no, that's the invention of us is probably not our invention, but we're going to be a benefit from this COVID-19.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think I remember reading a report only 2 weeks ago, the ABC online, that regional Victoria, country Australia, regional Australia is going through a property boom at the moment because everybody's workplace has said, you know what, we will let you work from home. It's going to be okay, and it's working. It seems to be working.
It is, and they're more productive. A lot of our admin team that are coming back and are saying, I don't want to be back in the office. I do for the social reasons, which we all want to. We want to see people out, but they're not getting interrupted or distracted by the conversation about this deal falling over or that particular show on Netflix or whatever it might be. And they're getting more done in a shorter period of time, and then of course having flexibility to do what they like outside of those things. So we were beneficial in the fact that we'd already had that experience through having a isolated town to COVID-19.
Yeah, wonderful.
Second nature. So
Guys, I really appreciate it. I got one final question for each of you. Firstly, I want to thank you both for taking time out of your very busy days as rebuilding and growing and moving forward in your businesses, and particularly when you've had the double whammy. You've just come out of the bushfires. We're now all in COVID. But what do you need right now, John? Is there anything that the community, Australia at large, what can we do? Should we all be shooting to KI? Should we be jumping online? How can we help?
Absolutely. Come and visit Kangaroo Island as soon as it opens and buy online. But coming to visit is going to help the local community more than ever. And don't forget us. Our biggest concern is mostly about the farmers out the western end who have lost 30 years of hard work and properties and where they're going to be now 6 months down the track. But come back to Kangaroo Island, come and visit, and let us send a bit of Kangaroo Island to you in a bottle.
Yeah, fantastic. Well done. How about you, Adam?
Mate, the general public has been incredibly generous to us. I think that, Adrian, I think you guys need to be recommended and commended for what you do as an agent and doing the things that you do. I think that's one of the things that I'd like the rest of the community to understand, that all agents aren't just slick salespeople trying to steal your rings off your fingers. Adrian's a perfect example of what a brilliant person can do in his position and continue to roll out. And again, I've been a big fan of his for 15 years. So, mate, you just keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep winning. So
yeah, good on you, Adam. Thank you very much. Kind words. John, Adam, thank you very much for joining us on The Real Estate Story. A really special episode. I hope all our listeners enjoy it. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for listening.
The Real Estate Story brought to you by Compton Green.